Good morning to you at home. Welcome back into Wake Up America. Happy Thursday. I'm Rob Finnerty. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about Hillary Clinton and her involvement in the Durham report and if the White House cared to comment in today's Psaki Dodge.
Do you know if there's still a system picking up server data on the EOP, and if not, when it stopped?
Again, I know you asked my colleague a few questions about this the other day, but I would point you any questions about this to the Department of Justice.
And then is what was described in the filing there, monitoring internet traffic, is that, generally speaking, would that be considered something along the lines of spying?
Again, I would point you to the Department of Justice.
And just quickly, who specifically at the Department of Justice should I be reaching out to? Is it a name, maybe and a phone number? That would be really helpful. Let's welcome in the Powerhouse panel and get some reaction to everything happening on this Thursday. Joining us for the very first time is National Pulse investigative reporter and podcast host Natalie Winters, National Advisory Board member for Project 21, Christopher Arps, and co-host of Wake Up America Weekend, Allison Maloney. All this happening while Joe Biden literally traveling to Ohio today to try and drum up support for Build Back Better. I thought we were done with Build Back Better. I thought that was dead. And I think it's become pretty darn clear that the American people don't have any interest in spending another $1 trillion on woke left policies. Natalie, good morning to you. Thanks for being with us. What do you make of what the administration is trying to do here with this pivot? Get us talking about Build Back Better again. A Quinnipiac poll coming out yesterday. The most important issue to average Americans right now, inflation, far and away number one, 27%.
It's all a distraction, and it's really all a deflection. I even think you can tie this into the issue of Ukraine. A recent poll from the Trafalgar Group showed that less than 1 in 6 Americans actually even wanted boots on the ground to be deployed if Russia were to invade. Yet all we seem to hear from the Biden regime, as we like to call it at the National Pulse, is stories about Russia, stories about Ukraine, stories about racism and wokeness, how we need to combat that. Yet actual issues that matter to everyday Americans, whether it's inflation or even the fact that you can't even go to supermarkets now and get food, those seem to be not just thrown under the table, but actually exacerbated by Biden, right? You see them enforcing vaccine mandates for Canadian truckers, our most important trade partner to the north. It's absolutely, I think, incomprehensible, some of the policies that the Biden regime is putting out, particularly when you try to reconcile the fact that they should be defending the interests of average Americans and American workers.
I thought it was interesting, the point about the pivot that we're seeing now with Democrats. Jen Psaki yesterday literally tried to say that inflation is a Republican issue, that Republicans won't come to the table to work with Democrats to try and find solutions to bringing inflation down. Take a listen.
Republicans are AWOL on the fight against inflation. And at this pivotal moment in our economy, everyone understands we need a full Federal Reserve Board, the first one in nearly a decade to tackle inflation and bring prices down for American families.
So I caught that yesterday, Chris, and I thought, well, maybe that's isolated. She's blaming it on Republicans. But then later in the day, I heard Chuck Schumer say the same thing. Take a listen.
The Democrats are the ones laser focused on showing where we stand and offering solutions that aim squarely at the problem. Republicans seem to have no solutions, just rhetoric. The other side, sadly, seems oftentimes motivated by something else. Rather than working with us in a bipartisan spirit, our Republican colleagues seem more comfortable giving speeches that go on and on about rising costs without offering any solutions.
Chris, the American people are not stupid. I think it's pretty clear that some kind of memo went out to Democratic leadership and said, hey, listen, 7.5% inflation, the highest we've seen since Ronald Reagan's first term. Blame it on Republicans.
Yeah, Psaki and Schumer have given me the opportunity to use one of my favorite phrases, and that is, that dog won't hunt.
Right.
You cannot blame Republicans for rising inflation when you control all 3 levers of government. And when Donald Trump left the presidency, inflation was at 1.8%. Build Back Better is a failure. Joe Manchin has said that it's not going to come into law. And as I said last week on the show, when you look back at Jimmy Carter's era when inflation was out of control, Jimmy Carter wanted to embark on an ambitious spending plan, which eventually raised inflation to 14% when he left office. We see Joe Biden and the Democrats of today trying to do the same thing.
Allison, let's play this out. So we've got Kathleen Rice, Congresswoman from New York. She announced yesterday she's going to retire in November, not run for re-election. That means 30 House Democrats aren't running for re-election. That's the most at this point in U.S. history. That's the most we've ever seen. Chris just brought up that 14% inflation rate that Jimmy Carter left us with in 1981. Then we had 12 years of Republican rule in the White House. Could we be setting ourselves up for something like that again here?
It's possible. I mean, look, we've got 30 people who are not running again because they're seeing the polls. We saw what happened in Virginia. Virginia was a blue state, turned red because people were fed up with what was going on with schools, and they were fed up with lawmakers telling us exactly what to do. So I see that being very possible. And look, the fact is that they're blaming Republicans. These are their talking points, Rob. You mentioned that memo.
Right.
If we keep saying that Republicans are to blame, then maybe somebody will listen. We'll keep talking about it on CNN for a few of their viewers that they have left. We'll go on MSNBC and these other news outlets, and we'll keep blaming them. So maybe people will actually believe that it's Republicans' fault that we are in this situation, which is not true. And you're right, Americans are not stupid, but that's the only thing they have. That's all they've got.
And right now, so according to AAA, gas 1 year ago today, $2.51 a gallon nationally. It's $3.51 a gallon today, so it's $1 more. That's a 40% increase year over year. Natalie, somebody got in the president's ear and said, why don't you go out on the road, leave Washington, and try and drum up support for Build Back Better, a bill that nobody wanted before the new year and nobody wants now with 7.5% inflation.
Well, you know, the Democrats are not just the party of failed policies, but it seems to be the party of failed people, right? We see that with all these candidates who are either dropping out of the race or people who've already lost are now reentering the race, like Hillary Clinton. You know, I think the issue is that for 4 years, the only issue that the Democratic Party could run on was anti-Trump, was Trump hatred, was pure Trump derangement syndrome. They criticized every single thing he did. But now that they, as you pointed out, control all levels of government, they don't have a boogeyman. They don't have someone to blame anymore. So the only thing they can do is use rhetoric, use talking points, and push these crazy policies that really no actual American, no living, breathing American seems to actually support.
Yeah, and everyone seems to know that except everyone who works at the White House and advises the commander-in-chief. Natalie, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Good seeing you. Chris, great to see you. We'll see you again real soon. Allison, stick around. Thanks, guys.